Hello, welcome to Jason the Old Millennial. My name is Jason, speaking here in my basement in the great state of Kansas. And I'm doing another, what I've been watching lately. Try to do these every once in a while, along with my 5-minute reviews, kind of review things I've watched. But it's got quite a bit of stuff I haven't talked about, and stuff I watched earlier in the year that I haven't talked about. And so I try to get, there's going to be a bunch of movies that I've seen, and try to get as many reviews in as possible within this video, so I can catch up with everything that I've watched. Anyways, yeah, so I'm just going to go right into it. There's a movie that I caught on Max, the HBO app, whatever, called Collision Course, which I had to watch because I couldn't believe this movie actually exists. It's a movie with Jay Leno and Pat Morita. You know, Pat Morita is known as Miyagi from Karate Kid, as a buddy cop comedy from, I want to say, the late 80s or something. Had no idea this movie existed. I mean, I'm sure it obviously like bombed and didn't do anything, and it's never been talked about or seen, but I found it on Max. I just happened to go across it, and I was like, I had to watch it, because it's like, I just can't believe there's a movie with Jay Leno and Pat Morita playing cops. It's just a kind of absurd idea. I kind of came away going, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't as bad as I thought. I thought it was going to be much worse. I thought Jay Leno and Pat Morita did a good job together. I thought their chemistry was fine. Pat Morita is definitely still doing his Miyagi kind of impression, since he's playing a Japanese cop, of course, and he's in America, and Jay Leno's an American cop, and he's investigating a murder of a fellow cop of his, a friend of his, against the cops, because he's actually not a murderer, you know, investigator or whatever, a detective or anything, but he wants to be part of it because a friend of his died. And then Pat Morita's character kind of comes in because I can't explain what's going on, but they're looking for blueprints to a car or something. I don't know. Didn't make a lot of sense, but yeah, it's funny. It's the only time you ever seen Jay Leno in a movie, because I didn't know he ever acted in a movie. And this was like, I think right before he got the Tonight Show. So he was just mostly known as a stand-up comedian. Of course, Pat Morita is coming off of Karate Kid and his Oscar nomination for that. So he was kind of a fairly big name at that moment. So they put him together. I've seen interviews where they mention Jay Leno. Jay Leno doesn't want to talk about this movie. He wants to pretend like it never existed. He just goes, yeah, it was a terrible experience, and he thought it was a terrible movie. I actually don't think it was the worst thing in the world. I think there's some comedy in there. Jay Leno, I think, does a decent job as a non-actor, but he's a comedian, so he does actually a decent job with some of the comedy kind of moments. And, I mean, the action, there's some explosions and some shootouts that aren't terrible. The bad guys are good. There was a fairly good cast. I can't remember all the cast members, but I remember the villains were pretty well casted, or, you know, character actors that I enjoy. And there's one silly scene where Pat Morita's character is not a karate guy, like in Karate Kid, or anything like that. But then there's one silly scene, comes out of nowhere, where they're in an alley, and the car is coming down the alley. The bad guys run them over, and Pat Morita jumps up and kicks through the windshield and kicks the guy, you know, something Chuck Norris would do in one of his movies. And it looks silly. It makes no sense, because that character, you never seen that character do anything like that. And obviously, physically, it couldn't happen. So it's a silly scene. And I know I've seen some of the background information. The movie is, I think the director, I think he might have got fired like halfway through the movie or something like that. And they ran out of budget. So there's Ernie Hudson's in this movie. I believe it was, you know, from Ghostbusters. And he played like Jay Leno, a cop that worked with Jay Leno. And like halfway through the movie, his character disappears. And from what I've seen and in interviews with Ernie Hudson, is that they ran out of budget, so they couldn't pay him anymore. So his character just disappeared because they couldn't pay the actor. So obviously a lot of issues with that movie, but you know, I didn't think it was a bad movie. I still think it's worth a watch just to see that if you can find it on Max. I still give it like a 3 out of 5 stars. I think it was actually kind of a fun movie to watch. A lot better than most movies I see today, to be honest. Anyway, so that's Collision Course. A movie I just saw yesterday, I thought I'd mention. I just happened upon it on video on demand. It's called Prepare to Die. And I just watched it because it looked like an action movie. Don't really know the main actor. He's a Latino actor who is a martial artist. And so I just came across it and I was like, oh, a martial arts movie. I love a martial arts movie. So I'm like, I'll check it out, just see if there's any good fight scenes or whatever. And yeah, and so it stars this guy who's going at this company, and the CEO is very corrupt, and of course, like his family gets murdered by this when he was young. I think his family got murdered by this guy, so he's like out for revenge. But he was trained like in in China or something like that, with martial arts or something. I can't remember, somewhere in Asia, and comes back to America to get revenge, and then meets other people that were wronged by this guy, and so they kind of form this group to go take this CEO guy out. Anyways, that's kind of the whole plot of it. Yeah, it's not worth a watch, to be honest. I do love good action stuff, but to me, there wasn't much action in it. It lacked a lot of action. There's a lot of setup of meeting the different characters and the plot and what to do. At the very end, like there's some action where they have to go infiltrate the business where the bad guy is, and there's a bunch of shootouts. Again, I was wanting to see it more as I want to see this guy, getting some martial arts, fights, and he does do some kicks and punches, and he looks pretty good. The main actor, martial arts wise, does a pretty good job. His high kicks are really well done, and he overall looks pretty good in fight scenes. But it really wasn't any great fight scenes, just him taking out some guys every once in a while, and then there's some shootouts. Nothing really that extraordinary. Like I said, very lackluster for an action movie, I would say, overall. And then you get to the final villain of the movie. This guy is kind of older guy, but I can tell, and he's a pretty good sized guy, and I can tell like okay, this guy might give a good fight. And sure enough, he's the main villain, gets in a fight with the main hero. And I'm thinking, all right, we're gonna get a good fight scene finally, one-to-one, hand-to-hand, martial arts fight scene. And it really wasn't very good because the villain just kicked the crap out of the hero, and the hero wasn't getting one hit on the villain. The villain's just boom, boom, just hitting him, and you're like, wow, he's getting his butt kicked. And I spoiled the movie, but the only reason why the villain loses because another one of the characters grabs a gun and shoots him, and then the hero gets on top of him and starts punching him. I'm like, wow, this does not make the hero look very good at all. Like makes it look like a punk. It's like you just got your butt kicked by the villain, and then you won him because he got shot. So to me, it was not set up very well. The execution was not done well. So very disappointing for that. They even have Quentin Rampage Jackson in this movie, who, if you know, he's a UFC fighter who played, he was in the A-Team movie playing the Mr. T character, Barabbas, I believe his name is, or whatever. And so I'm like, all right, Quentin Jackson will get into a big fight scene. Well, he gets in a fight scene with the girl, and the girl beats him because she has a knife and she stabs him and slits his throat. And I'm like, oh, that was not very climatic either. So overall, Prepare to Die, I'd give it like a 1 star. Not a worthwhile action movie, in my opinion. All right, I'm gonna go back to some movies that I saw earlier this year that I haven't talked about and I've been wanting to talk about. I want to talk about Godzilla X Kong, The New Kingdom or something like that. Now I'm forgetting the full title, but it's the latest Godzilla Kong movie. After the last one was, I think, Godzilla versus King Kong or something like that. This is the next one, New Empire. I think it's called The New Empire. God X Kong, The New Empire, or something like that. And here we see King Kong is in the underground, or in the, I forget what they call it, in this like almost own universe that's in the middle of the earth or something. and he's kind of lonely. He's the only giant ape there, and there's other villainous creatures that he's fighting against that we see. But then he happens upon some more Kongs, some more giant apes, and kind of follows them to this society that evidently lives down there. And there's a villainous monkey ape that's in charge of all these apes, and is very, evil, over controlling, very cruel. And he also happens to have like a crystal that controls like this ice breathing dragon thing. And so he comes across that, and he's trying to free these apes from this rule kind of, but then he kind of can't defeat him because of the ice breathing dragon that he's in control of. And so then he has to go back to Earth to get Godzilla, who's kind of just hanging around Earth. He sleeps inside the Roman Colosseum, and he gets up because every once in a while a creature will show up, and he goes and defeats it, because Godzilla's all about like killing all creatures, all kaijus, whatever that show up everywhere. And anyways, and so then he kind of goes down and helps Godzilla. Godzilla kind of goes down and helps King Kong fight this ape and the other dragon. Anyways, I'm giving the whole plot of the movie. And there's some human beings that are involved as well, as there always is. Overall, I really like this movie. It's one of my favorite movies of the year, in fact. It's a top 5 right now movie for me, after I've seen about 20 movies so far this year. And it's kind of a guilty pleasure, the Godzilla King Kong movies that have come out. They're not great, I don't think, but most of them are pretty good. I really like Kong Island, is it? I think it's my favorite. Kong versus Godzilla vs. King Kong, it was fine. It had some good moments. Again, it's always the human characters that I don't care for, but I love the big monster fights. That's why I keep coming back to these movies. And this is probably my favorite one out of the series, to be honest. A lot of it's because the special effects are amazing. I mean, the creature designs are just so good, and the fight scenes between giant creatures, man, they are so well done. I think King Kong's really well developed as a character. I mean, I think I'm a bigger fan of Kong than I am of Godzilla. I like that this movie is really a Kong movie, and we get to kind of see, how he's different emotions from him, because you can't really it's hard to tell emotions from Godzilla, but Kong, he's a little bit better at seeing emotions in his face, and his whole story, trying to find other apes like him. I do like the whole story arc with him. I thought it was really good. Godzilla just kind of comes and goes in the movie, doesn't really do a whole lot until the very end. He kind of helps Kong. But my favorite scene is we get a second round 2 of Godzilla vs. Kong, which I was not expecting, because the last movie was all about Kong and Godzilla getting into these, they got in 3 major fights in that movie, if I remember right. It's about them going back and forth, and then they eventually, of course, there's a more evil bad guy that they have to team up for. But it's interesting, Kong kind of goes to get Godzilla, and Godzilla, I guess, still has a lot of animosity towards Kong, so Godzilla immediately attacks Kong, and all of a sudden we got a Kong-Godzilla fight. I'm like, oh, wow. And it was a really cool fight. I thought it was the best fight in the whole movie. It's my favorite scene in the movie. So I was like, wow, this was a great fight scene between 2 CGI characters. I mean, CGI is so good, I think, this movie. That's what helped anyways. And then the final battle scene, I thought was really well done, very creative. Like I said, I don't know, I'm really into these big creature fight scenes, to be honest. And to me, it's one of those movies, I feel like it gets fairly, it did really well, I think, at the box office. I feel like it's mostly gotten more negative reviews. And I think just people are never going to like these kind of movies. I thought it was a lot of fun. Like I say, this is one of those movies that's just fun. It's just a really fun action flick of giant monsters fighting each other. I mean, if that's what you want, this has it. If you want something more in depth, then it's not going to have it for you. But I give it 3.5 stars. I think it's a solid creature action movie of the year anyways. All right, next movie is a movie I saw on Netflix earlier this year, and it's not one that's ever been talked about. I haven't seen a whole lot of people review this movie. Another one, actually, I really enjoy, and that's Unfrosted, which is a comedy, I believe, written by Jerry Seinfeld and stars Jerry Seinfeld. in the key role. So and I'm a big Jerry Seinfeld fan, so I do love seeing him make another movie after B Movie. He wrote, I believe, that animation movie back in the day. But yeah, it's a kind of almost a parody on like invention movies. It's a movie about a guy who invents the Pop-Tart, basically. A guy who works for, I think, Kellogg or something like that, works for one of the major cereal companies, and they're competing against another cereal company. And so they're trying to, it's kind of a race. It's almost like almost a parody of the space race in a sense. I guess there's a bit of that in there as well. Because it takes place, I want to say in the 80s or 90s period. So it's kind of a period piece movie. It might be, I can't remember exactly when it was, but it's a period type piece. It might even farther back, might be 70s now I think about it. But yeah, it's like a period piece movie anyways. And yeah, so they're trying to invent a new breakfast treat, which is the Pop-Tart. It's fictional, of course, telling of this idea. And coming from someone who loves Pop-Tarts, like I've eaten Pop-Tarts my whole life. I think Pop-Tarts are great, great invention, whoever did invent that. Anyways, but to me, I thought it's the funniest movie I've seen so far this year. One of my favorite. I thought it absolutely hilarious, the idea of these companies, you know, fighting against each other. And it's a really great cast, and I didn't write down everybody. Jim Gaffigan plays a pretty major part in it. Melissa McCarthy, also Amy Schumer plays like the villainous competing role, if I remember right. And then there's all these characters, and they're playing real people. Like Bill Burr shows up playing John F. Kennedy. So it's the 60s. Now I'm thinking, oh, yeah, it's the 60s because John F. Kennedy is in the movie played by Bill Burr. So yeah, it takes place in the 60s period because they also talk about, again, yeah, now I remember they also talk about the space race as well. But anyways, and so you got all these great actors, comedic actors playing real people in it, and playing kind of fictional people too. Like you have, and there's a lot of Saturday Night Live people, which I don't watch Saturday Night Live as much anymore, but I still enjoy when I see people from that, from Saturday Night Live show up anyways. But there's just so many funny scenes. It's hard to explain, but it's just absurd hilarity throughout the movie. A lot of absurd type scenes being done, but I think very funny ideas. Hugh Grant plays a villain in this role as well. Yeah, and just a great cast of characters, and yeah, just I think really brilliant writing in my opinion. I've heard a lot of negative reviews. If I hear anybody talk about this movie, I've heard people don't think it's funny. So it's one of those things. You either think it's funny or it's not, I guess. For me, I don't know. It spoke to me humorously. I love that. It was, I guess I love that. It felt like a parody film in a sense. You know, it's a funny way to tell the story, and, you know, kind of compare it to like others, you know, movies about, you know, inventing somebody who invents something, you know, and competing against another company to invent it first, you know. You've seen those kind of movies before, and it does a really good job kind of portraying that type of movie, but being a little more silly in its outtake. But I personally would recommend Unfrosted, which is out on Netflix. It came out earlier this year. I want to say during the summer. Another movie I'll talk about, one of the more disappointing movies for me is Fall Out Guy. It was kind of seen as this like cool like action comedy with a lot of course special effects, a lot of action scenes, because it's kind of an homage to stunt performers, as the main character is a stunt man. I guess it's based off a TV show I never heard of before. Now I'm blanking on the main character, but Gosling, I believe it is. Gosling, it feels like he's playing Ken again. He's kind of has that Ken kind of comedy to him. He's definitely is a guy who, he has, of course, great looks. He's a great looking guy, six-pack abs. You know, he plays, you know, romantic comedies perfectly. And he's an Oscar-nominated actor. But I feel like he does comedy a lot. He could be a guy who could do serious roles, but he seems to really have found his niche in comedy, kind of action comedy movies, I would say. And even Barbie's just comedy, I guess. Ryan Gosling. Yeah, Ryan Gosling, really the star of this movie. But I wasn't really into the movie. because the guy's a stunt performer, and so he's the actor that he's stunning for is missing, so he has to go look for him, but he gets involved in all these villains that are trying to kill him, I guess. And it's like, this guy's not a fighter, he's just a stunt performer. So it's kind of silly to me that this guy is the guy you go to go find somebody. You know, you'd rather go to a detective or, you know, something more than this guy. So it doesn't make a lot of sense, the whole plot of it for me. And like, Gosling's great, you know, I mean, he's funny. He definitely is a star, like I said. He's really on a high after Barbie and being nominated, I believe, for that movie as Ken, and all that. And I don't know, I just wasn't, and there's a plot twist. I know what really got me is the plot twist. When you find out like who the real villain is, I was like, oh really? That's where they're going? Like, we're gonna have this plot twist? I don't know why I wasn't into that twist of who the bad guy was. I was like, I could have done with all that. I don't know. I just wasn't into this movie. Was never really interested in it. They do have some action stunt scenes, of course, because it's about stunt work, which is all fine. But I don't know. Just the story overall just never was good enough to really make me care, I guess. And so for me, it's like a 2.5 stars out of 5. Like close, but not quite good enough for me to recommend. Next movie is... we're getting a lot of fourth installments of movies lately, in animation especially. And we got Kung Fu Panda 4, which I saw earlier, I feel like this year. Again, none of these in the movie theater, just on my phone mostly, through apps and so forth, streaming services and whatnot. Kung Fu Panda 4, man, I really feel like we did not need another Kung Fu Panda. And I'm the biggest fan of the first Kung Fu Panda. First Kung Fu Panda, one of my favorite animation movies. Great story. The action is really done well. Jack Black is absolutely hilarious as Po the Panda. Love that character and his arc there. To be honest, I haven't been a fan of any of the sequels. Even Panda 2 just was kind of, and Panda 3 were all kind of lackluster. It was like, the story just wasn't there. Like that first movie just had the perfect story, perfect villain. Second, third movie, I don't know, the villains just weren't as interesting. The storyline wasn't as interesting. And so I was not excited for a fourth one. I thought they really haven't done anything great since the first one. And so I finally got around to watch it. And yeah, it was probably my least favorite out of the 4. It was just dull. Wasn't that funny. Wasn't that interesting with storyline. Here we got Po is kind of going to be the next leader. He's kind of taking a more leadership role. And one of the worst things about this movie is that the other characters are in the other movies that are major, you know, side characters, major part of the story, aren't in this. The other Kung Fu masters, and the you know, really good cast of actors. You know, like Jackie Chan is in it, and David Cross, I think, and is it David Cross and who was it? I'm forgetting now who's, I want to say like Angelina Jolie or somebody, I can't remember, is in it. Anyways, so it's like all these great characters are not even in this movie. And they are a major part of the other movies. And they just like said, oh, they're busy doing this. So that sucked. It was only Po coming back. We introduced this new character who's very annoying, who I believe was voiced by Awkwafina. Awkwafina is the most annoying actress, from my opinion. I can't take another Awkwafina movie. Every time she appears in a movie, she just ruins it, especially voice acting. And I think she voice acts this character that comes in who's a traitor. Like she's a thief, and you're like, oh, you're supposed to, hopefully you're supposed to like her, but then she like backstabs him, and you're like, oh, don't like her, but then she's good again. It's this back and forth. And the villain was seemed like the same villain that we've seen in other Kung Fu Panda movies. It didn't feel like that original of a villain that we needed here. The only cool thing is I guess we do get cameos from previous villains from other movies, kind of make cameos at the end at one point. But yeah, overall, it was just a dull sequel. And yeah, just didn't care for the plot at all. Didn't really have a lot of laughs to it. It just wasn't, it was just one of those cash grab movies that I feel like no reason to make it except they think maybe they can make some money off of this franchise because it's fairly popular. But it was a total miss for me. Kung Fu Panda, I'd give 2 stars to. All right, let's talk about one more movie, I guess, on this video. Talk about Furiosa, a Mad Max story. Another big action movie that really kind of bombed. Fall Out Guy didn't do very well in the theater either. These action movies have actually not done real well lately. I think Furiosa is one that people are expecting to be one of the big blockbusters because it's kind of a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, which was, a fairly popular movie. Got a lot of Oscar nominations and won some. And so they're kind of going off of the popularity of that first one, though it seems like it's been a while since the last one. So they probably took too long. But here we're going to concentrate on Furiosa, which is a character that Charlize Theron played in the Mad Max Fury Road movie. But we got a different actress here playing, Anna Taylor-Joy, I believe, playing the character. So we're kind of seeing her origin story, basically. Though nobody probably really cares about seeing her origin story, we're more interested in Mad Max than Furiosa. But of course, in today's age, we have to talk about the female. We're really into female action characters, even though most of us are more interested in male action characters. And those movies do much more better at the box office than these female-led action movies. Yet they keep throwing it down our throats because they want to accept women as like action heroes, which just doesn't make sense to us, because it's like, yeah, I'd rather watch a big bulging guy beat people up with, a 5'2", 100-pound girl. It just doesn't make sense. So already it was kind of behind the 8 ball, I think, for that reason alone. And this movie, first half is so boring. I mean, we're just seeing her as a little girl and seeing her, how she gets kidnapped by this gang. And Chris Hemsworth is the main villain. And I like Chris Hemsworth. He's good at these kind of roles. He does a decent job as kind of this incompetent kind of leader of this gang. Anyways, we see her grow up, and then she kind of gets a job in the gang, and in the one guy's gang, the main villain of the first movie's gang, and she becomes like a mechanic. Anyways, and she, of course, wants revenge and all that. But man, it is nothing like happens for like the first hour of the movie. It's like, oh my gosh, this is so boring watching this origin of this character. Nothing really exciting. It's about halfway through the movie, we get this one really good action sequence where she's on this, it's Mad Max, so they're out in the desert. It's post-apocalyptic kind of, where it's every man for themselves. And definitely got a specific look to it that makes it Mad Max. And these bandits, marauders, are attacking her caravan that she's on, and they have to fend it off between these bandits who are jumping on, and so there's shootouts, fights, whatever, while they're also racing along this desert. It's a really good scene, I think, really well choreographed, and everybody dies in the scene except for her and the driver, who becomes kind of her, kind of falls in love with, I guess, in some sense. But anyways, yeah, that was a fun scene, I would say. That was it. Besides that, nothing really that fun or interesting happens throughout most of the movie. We get another scene, I think, towards the end, another kind of action sequence, but it wasn't nearly as good as that other one. And I was just so bored at that point, I just didn't care anymore. Never really got me on. Didn't really care about the character so much. I mean, it's a revenge character, fine, but nothing really new there. And I'm not just a big fan, to be honest, I'm not a fan of any of these Mad Max movies. They don't really speak to me. It's not my kind of movies, I guess. I don't know, just these movies where there's a lot of just car chase scenes, and it seems like that's all it's about, is car chase scenes. And it's not enough for me, I guess. I don't know. A lot of people love it, but that style. But I'm just not into the style of the movie, I guess. Like I wasn't in any of the other Mad Max movies. Yeah, so to me, this is another 2-star movie. It's just another really boring action flick that really don't feel like it was needed to be made. Again, trying to off of the first movie that was popular and trying to make a sequel. Hopefully that will get enough people, but it bombed. So I see this series probably not going anywhere since this movie did not do well, for good reason. Yeah, it was not well done. in my opinion, and it's another just lackluster. This summer was really lackluster. Like the King Kong was like the best action movie I've seen this last summer. Besides that, it's been a lot of lackluster action movies, a lackluster summer blockbuster movie. Most of them didn't work for me, unfortunately. So, but I'll end it there, and I still have many more movies to talk about, so I'll have to do another one soon to try to cover the rest of the movies on my list. But that's what I got for now. Feel free to comment. What do you think about these movies? Have you seen them? What do you think? Did you like them more than me? Love to see your comments. Besides that, thank you for watching this video. Thank you for liking it. And thank you to all my subscribers for supporting the channel. I appreciate you all and hope you have a good day.